Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be talking specifically about 7 stars, and which I personally believe to be the 10 best 7-star champions unawakened. And obviously, as all other of these lists, it is, a mixture of personal preferences with current game trends. It will vastly differ based on what you're focused on. For instance, if you're primarily focused on just questing, maybe Rocket or Domino or something should make this list for you, so on and so forth. So obviously we each play this game differently, we each have our different priorities, and without hiding it, I place heavier emphasis on kind of like competitive game modes, on finding uses for these champions in kind of like scenarios where it matters the most. Because to me, if you run Act 8 and if you get KO'd, fine, whatever. You have 4 other champions and you can use a revive, and a ton of champions can do those quests well. For me, the champions truly gain value largely when, the most competitive players use these champions in situations when it matters the most, when losing comes with consequences, such as in Alliance Wars, such as in Battlegrounds primarily. So, absolutely not trying to hide my kind of like accents of value, or how I distribute value to champions. That being said, this entire list is going to be in no specific order, for the most part, and let's get to it. So, specifically, Unawakened 7-star. I think pretty much the best pull, though, or one of the 3 best pulls, could be Bishop. Because Bishop's Awakened ability only really matters in kind of questing situations, but realistically, Bishop for questing isn't used that much, and you can definitely get a ton of abilities out of him and ton of fights done even without the Awakened ability. I mean, it is nice to have him kind of awakened for defense, because then his specials become unblockable with less prowess, but it doesn't really matter that much. But all of his offensive utility for all of the fights pretty much is packed in his base kit. In my opinion, Bishop has had quite a massive resurgence. Obviously, him being a great counter for Korg and a ton of other champions, him being a decent defender that can trip opponents up. And yeah, I think Bishop is currently one of the best 7-star pulls that one can get, especially considering that beefy challenger rating, increased stats. I would absolutely love a 7-star Bishop, and I would use it over my 6-star rank 4 at a relatively high stake. Moving on, Hulk. Hulk's Awakened ability it gives him a passive Unstoppable based on the Sig level when he enters Rage, which is neat, I suppose. It definitely isn't such much of a thing. And also you gain physical resistance and critical resistance while unstoppable based on missing health. It's extremely conditional, and it really doesn't matter in 99% of the situations. Yeah, so absolute offensive powerhouse. He's one of the more effective nukes in the game currently. He definitely has gained massive amounts of popularity because of his release of 7-star. His buff was quite potent, his buff was largely beloved, and there were people who already started using him before he came out as 7-star, took him to rank 3, took him to rank 4, and now he came out as 7-star, and that just helped him become more popular, and you can see why, because he is very potent, he's very straightforward and simple. He doesn't have the largest amount of utility. He's basically poison immune, and then he can inflict a ton of debuffs on the opponent, and he also can basically stun champions forever. And that's it, but you don't really need much more, and he definitely is one of the best 7-star champions to pull in the game right now. Now, moving on, I think Dragonman deserves to be in this top 10 list as well, because Dragonman's Awakened ability is nice, but it's definitely not, a must-have. But thanks to increased attack, thanks to maxed out combat power rate, higher challenger rating, all that, Dragonman, becomes a significantly bigger problem defensively. He's definitely one of those champions where people immediately swap out their 6-star rank 4 Dragonmans for 7-star should you gain one. And obviously offensively, he's quite capable as well. So we definitely see him used in Battlegrounds as a dual-purpose champion. We see him in Alliance War as a defender. I don't think I have seen him too much on Alliance War as an attacker, but there's quite a bit in his kit, and whilst he isn't the most OP champion in the game, he's also always has been one of those champions that's extremely solid, good, and doesn't really need to be awakened. So he's perfect for lists such as this, and in my opinion, one of the bigger W's to pull out of the current 7-star pull, Unawakened. And moving on, Sunspot. Now, Sunspot's awakened ability is quite important for kind of like medium to longer level fights, but realistically, 7-star Sunspot has enough damage to cover vast majority of the matchups, even unawakened, and that's all you need. He has regained his popularity even before the release of 7 stars due to Battlegrounds and the fact that he can nuke stuff down very, very quickly, and a lot of less than orthodox matchups. The fact that he can nuke down like Rintras or Man Things and a whole bunch of different champs you wouldn't necessarily think about. He's one of the faster answers to Nick Fury, obviously. And yeah, now we also have a 7-star. And again, if you have a 6-star rank 3, 6-star rank 4, and the 7-star, 7-star's probably going to do better than those. So, Sunspot's definitely a huge W. Not to mention the fact that he will be an absolute prestige machine for foreseeable future. But prestige in itself is not really used in evaluations here. Now, I am including Shuri in my top 10, even though Shuri still technically is garbage. If her buff, and here's the big caveat with Shuri, if her buff remains approximately the same or exactly the same as we saw it in CCP testing, she, in my opinion, is going to be one of the best 7-star champions that we can pull right now, because effectively they are doubling her damage output. They're reducing the max amount of shocks you will be able to inflict. They are doubling the potency, basically, and also adding a few more abilities that will make her easier to run, such as refreshing the shocks with level 1 and stuff like that, proposing them. And you can basically spend the entire fight, if you want, spamming level 1s and thus gaining access to guaranteed critical hits throughout the fight. In other words, there is quite a bit of utility, and ever since Shuri was to come out, I always said that, I really like her kit in the sense that all of the hits are non-contact, so you can use her against, champions that would punish you for making contact on nodes, and then she can't ever be parried. Her specials are fairly tricky to evade. She can access miss mechanic on heavy attack, and she has quite a bit of other kind of like unstated utilities that I was excited to see. The problem and the question was whether her damage output will be good enough. And it never had been. Realistically, her damage output shocked in any short to mid-level fights. After the change, I suspect her damage output is going to be capable enough, or more than capable, for her to be used in shorter length fights, and that changes everything for a champion, because then all of a sudden you're a champion that deals full energy damage, doesn't make contact with the opponent, is shock immune, doesn't gain precision from dexterity, thus have many favorable mystic matchups. Also, ability accuracy cannot be reduced against mutants or otherwise, so disorients or concussions will really have no meaningful impact on her. She's going to be able to kill dominoes very well. Obviously, ridiculous amount of shocks. As I said, she will have a new rotation where you can basically guarantee yourself in endless amount of guaranteed crits as well. And yeah, I think her awakened ability is nice. It's not absolutely not a must-have. And I think Shuri, if you have Shuri, you should be very, very happy for the next update. Moving on, Sasquatch. And Sasquatch is obviously primarily a defender. I do think people underestimate Sasquatch as an attacker. I underestimate Sasquatch as an attacker kind of subconsciously because I look at him as a mystic tank. But I have used him on offense recently as a 6-star rank 4, and he has been impressing me relatively pleasantly, being able to even KO a Rintra with 80 seconds on the clock and pretty much full health bar. So he definitely has relatively decent offensive uses, but we realistically look at him as a defender. And his awakened ability is helpful for him on defense if opponent is using champions that are not able to deal with his region or not suitable for it. And that's kind of the trick, in Battlegrounds and in Alliance War. Vast majority of the time, people will use champions that do rest that region anyways. People will use their Mr. Negatives or Torches or Scorpions or what have you. And that region kind of becomes somewhat irrelevant to a point where if I had a choice of 200 rank 4 Sasquatch or a 7-star rank 1 unduped Sasquatch, I'm quite sure that I'd just use the 7-star one because of the increased challenger rating, increased health, increased attack. And yeah, because of that, and because of the fact that he's like one of the staple defenders in every single game mode, because of his tankiness, I think he's an amazing, amazing pull that I personally hope to pull sooner rather than later. Moving on, Titania. Now, Titania is a bit different in the sense that her Awakened ability does help her a lot. The fact where if you do have a rank 4 Sig 200 Titania, in most of the matches, you probably will be better off using your 6-star rank 4 max Sig over 7-star rank 1, even though 7-star rank 1 has high attack, because you can increase your Fury potency, you can inflict more debuffs, thus gain more Furies, and it matters, it adds up. At the same time, there's no denying that defensively, as a stall type of tactic, as a stall type of champion, 7-star Titania is more potent, and obviously there's the challenger rating thing. And I do think that 7-star Titania is capable enough offensively as well for her to be amazing pull, amazing addition, especially if you have yet to rank 4 at 6-star Titania. In this case, I would kind of think whether I'd use 6-star or 7-star based on which kind of meta or what kind of situation. But there's no denying that if you do pull a 7-star Titania, you're a happy and lucky guy, and she is still an amazing champion to have. Moving on, Gore. Now, Gore's Awakened ability largely matters for just ability to bypass auto block. And that is super helpful in fights against like Penny or Modok, but realistically, compared to Miss Mechanics and Evade and Unstoppable, auto block isn't as present in most of the metas. So in vast majority of the cases, you can definitely get away with your Gore being unawakened, and it will make little to no impact to your fights. And then obviously there is the fact that Gore is in fact relatively hard champion to deal with, because if you place him on defense, unless opponent has like a great counter, he can be a massive problem due to his region, and obviously if he does touch your block late in the fight, it can end up and very, very badly, very, very quickly. And then he has plenty of offensive capabilities as well. So I do think that pulling Gore is absolutely amazing and helpful to your account. You can easily throw him on defense, not caring about the fact that he's unduped. And in vast majority of situations, you can use him offensively without noticing the fact that he's duped. And increased attack, increased combat power rate, all of that stuff really does help the guy. And then moving on, Mangog. Now, Mangog has a similar situation to Sasquatch. I do think his signature ability is quite nice because you can ramp up quicker while Unstoppable Mangog passively regenerates. But all of these things are basically offensive things, and Mangog is largely a defensive champion. Now, you can use Mangog offensively as well to relatively moderate success. He obviously isn't going to be, long shot or Mystic Spidey offensively or Tigra, but he can get some of the more appropriate matchups down. But primarily, people use him for defense. And this is something that I got to experience myself, where a 7-star Mangog was much, much, much tougher to get down than a 6-star rank 4 due to challenger rating, meaning I was able to crit less, I crit less often, I took more block damage. With Mangog, that matters a lot if we ever push him to level 2. And the fight duration just being extended, Mangog's combat power rate being increased, all of those things make the fight harder. Again, where without a doubt, if I had a rank 4 Sig 200 Mangog or a 7-star unduped one, I'd be running the 7-star unduped one almost always. And yeah, he's a very, very solid defender. In general, I do not value him as a defender as highly as Sasquatch, but still, he is a force to be reckoned with, and I personally would be extremely happy to pull him as a 7-star. Moving on, the final champion I'm going to add here is Venom. And he's another champion where it's very good to have him duped. It would let your ramp start faster because you have a chance to start with additional genetic memory buffs. And also your genetic memory buffs gain more potency. But luckily, suppose the ability potency increase isn't that massive. Like, comparatively speaking, Supreme Spidey has like 50% potency increase to his spells, or Silver Surfer increase up to 50% potency. Venom having a more modest signature ability increase makes it less important when you're missing it, because that increase potency of your buffs isn't as noticeable. And then obviously in between increased challenger rating, meaning you will be critting more often, which means that your bleeds will have a chance to trigger more often. And because of your increased attack, he will, have more juicy bleeds. He's definitely very, very, very capable champion that I think a lot of people kind of have moved away from, but this is a perfect chance for him to make a comeback because he still obviously shuts down the Spider champion Evade. He's immune to power burn and drain from tech champions, has access to armor break, has access to bleed, has access to a ton of debuffs, and all of that is very useful. And even though before he wasn't necessarily the most popular champion for stuff like Alliance War and Battlegrounds, I do think now that we will see more of him as 7-star, we will see more of him running around because he was never too far off. He's like one of those champions that I think was more used for story questing and Alliance quest, but because of the 7-star release, I do think he's gonna gain some more popularity in very, very near future, and I look forward to watching that. And I do think he deserves to be on this list because he's still very capable champion. Right, so all that being said, let me know which champions you would have added. I do understand that a lot of this is personal preference, and again, you can definitely make an argument for unduped Storm Pyramid X being, extremely capable, or War Machine, or what have you. So keep in mind that, we all have different perspectives and we don't necessarily think the same, but ultimately this is my top 10. So again, to quickly rehash: Bishop, Hulk, Dragonman, Sunspot, Shuri, Sasquatch, Titania, Gore, MCOC, and Venom are, in my opinion, 10 best unawakened 7-star champions to pull right now. Let me know which champions you would remove, which champions you would add, and I look forward to hearing from you. See you guys soon. Bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about